What do you think of monogamous relationships? Like philosophically, can you maybe steel man or make the case for monogamous relationships?
Um,
Can you understand the pros and cons of monogamous relationships? I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how you defend. If you're like, hey, you can do whatever you want, but you and I are going to spend the rest. Like, you're 80 years old, and like, oh, we spent 60 years in a marriage together. We've never had sex with anybody else. I think that's like awesome. If that's what you want, that's great. I have like a little bit more problems with people doing that while also forcing their partner not to misbehave if they want to. Like if you're like, we only made it this far in a monogamous relationship because I forced my partner not to pursue an intimacy that she wanted to. Then I feel like a little like more like, I don't know if that's great.
How do you know if it's a real want for an intimacy? Like checking out a attractive person while being inside a monogamous relationship. Yeah, how do you square that? Is that bad that the person cannot pursue those feelings?
I mean, it depends if they want to. Like I often find people attractive I don't want to pursue. I'm also okay with people entering into agreements. Like if you and I want to agree, like I'm only going to enter this because I'm going to be so hurt if you pursue somebody else. So I'm not going to pursue anybody else. That seems fine to me. But I also extend that. Like if somebody's like, I don't want you to have any friends, I'm going to feel really insecure if you, and like,
Right.
Okay, like if you want to enter that agreement, like I feel the same way. Like I think you should have the right to do it if this is what you want. But I also I feel like a little weird about restricting your partner from doing things, you know?
Oh, but I guess if you're honest about it and you just put it on the table.
Yeah.
I don't want you to have any friends.
Yeah.
I want you to sit in a box.
Yeah, I think
I guess if you're like really on but then there's a power dynamic that like you can be quite influential in a relationship in convincing your partner, and it sure sounds like you're honestly agreeing to a thing, but you're not really agreeing. That's part of that is the beauty of relationships, right? Like it's messy. It can be messy. It's hard to know what you really want, right?
I think that's mainly my complaint with monogamy. Like I'm down with like conscious monogamy.
Yeah.
But I think so many relationships are like monogamous by default. Like people, it's not actually right for them, but they just get into it because culture just doesn't give them another option.
And they don't even ask themselves the question, is this right for me?
Right. Which like I'm a weird ass person who thinks a lot of weird shit, but I didn't even think about polyamory as an option before I had heard that it existed.
Yeah.
And I was only when I first met my first polyamorous couple, and I was like, oh, that's what I am. That's clearly the thing that I am.
Yeah, it's funny because to me, monogamy, it's not it doesn't make sense for it to be a default. Like to me, monogamy goes against human nature. That's, in some sense, like romance is a fuck you to the way the world works.
Really?
Yeah, like it's like Romeo and Juliet romance, like traditional description of what romance looks like versus like, sure, there's like a million variations of that, but in my head, like this partnership that's for a long time together is a kind of, like I don't know, like True Romance. You know that movie? It's a really fucking good movie.
I haven't seen it. No.
Okay, there's just like you're together against the world. Yeah, that's what close friendship feels like. It's like ride or die. Right?
Yeah.
Like that. I guess it doesn't, it can span across multiple, you can have multiple partners in that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I just don't see monogamy as like this, definitely not a default. And I would actually, like, honestly, would probably see polyamory as a more natural default.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on what you mean by default. Like most of human history has been sort of a weird mix. Like you get polygamy and monogamy are the kind of the main arrangements.
But I mean, it's just like human nature. Like
people are attracted to other people and they want to.
Yeah.
Especially in longer term relationships. I tracked in my relationship survey, I tracked the amount of cheating over time in a relationship. Like how long have you been in this relationship and how have you cheated?
What's the results of that?
Men cheat a lot. Women too, but men cheat about 30% more than women do. I also asked men and women to predict if they think their partner has cheated. And people's predictions were about the same. So people roughly predicted that their male or female like spouse hadn't cheated about the same rate, but men cheated much more than women.
So who was more correct in their prediction though?
So men were more correct in their predicting women, and women were more off. Women thought men cheated much less than they actually did, but both of them were off. But like the male gap was significantly more. So yeah, I mean you're right. When you say monogamy is not default, like I think you're like really getting at something. Like human beings are just, especially in long-term relationships, it's difficult to only want one person. But to be fair, I think monogamy and commitment are very different. I think you'd be incredibly. I've known so many very long-term, super committed poly couples that live lives that look very similar to the very romantic monogamous couples, like
Yeah.
children, houses, like 20 years.
Yeah.
And that works great for them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's so much to like open your mind to in these kinds of conversations, these kinds of ideas. But I also like realize like some of the cake is baked. Like I have some assumptions that are hard to break through
Like what?
for myself. Like it's difficult for me to imagine a polyamorous relationship for me that would work.
Yeah.
But I don't have enough data. I don't have I have very little. But like at this point, it's like I haven't eaten pizza in like 20 years because I know I just don't. There's a bunch of stuff. I just eat low carb because it makes me feel good. But there's so many foods I haven't explored. It's just like, well, I know what I love. So
Yeah, well, then you're probably
you explore every
very
once in a while.
monogamous.
Yeah, and you kind of figure that out. But at the same time, you're humbled by like even talking to you or looking at your data. Like with sexuality is a fascinating topic because it seems that we're very, like we were talking about, very afraid of this topic. Like to be really honest with ourselves about it. The whole like academic research is afraid of it, but it's so core to who we are as human beings.